In the small, sleepy town of Bradford, Pennsylvania, there was an old house on the edge of the woods that had been vacant for as long as anyone could remember. The house, known locally as the Carmichael Place, had a reputation for being haunted, though no one knew the full story behind it. That changed when the Miller family moved in. In the summer of 1985, David Miller, a high school teacher, his wife Lisa, and their teenage daughter, Sarah, relocated from the city to Bradford, seeking a quieter life. They were drawn to the Carmichael Place because of its charm and the expansive yard that promised a serene retreat from their hectic urban life. The house was beautiful in a dilapidated sort of way, with its Victorian architecture and overgrown garden, but it was clear it had been neglected for decades. The first few weeks in the house were uneventful. The Millers busied themselves with renovations and settling in. But as autumn approached, strange occurrences began to unsettle them. It started with odd noises, footsteps echoing in the hallways when no one was there, the sound of a piano playing a few notes in the dead of night, even though there was no piano in the house. Sarah was the first to experience something she couldn't explain. One night, as she lay in bed, she heard a faint whisper coming from the corner of her room. The whispering grew louder and more urgent, but when she turned on the light, she saw nothing but shadows. Her parents brushed it off as an overactive imagination, but Sarah knew what she had heard. Lisa Miller, who had always been a skeptic of such things, began to notice unsettling patterns. Doors would close on their own, and objects seemed to move. A particularly disturbing incident involved her finding a family photograph she was sure she had packed away in a box, now displayed prominently on the mantelpiece. One evening, David was working late in his study when he heard a loud thump followed by the sound of glass shattering from the living room. He rushed downstairs only to find a small mirror on the floor, its frame splintered, but with no sign of how it had fallen. The room was empty, and Lisa and Sarah were nowhere near the disturbance. Desperate for answers, Lisa decided to research the house's history. She visited the local library and combed through old newspapers and records. What she discovered was both fascinating and chilling. The Carmichael Place had once been the home of the Carmichael family, who had lived there in the early 1900s. The Carmichaels were known for their wealth and social prominence, but their household was plagued by tragedy. Their young daughter, Abigail, had died under mysterious circumstances at the age of 7. The official cause was listed as an accident, but there were rumors of a possible poisoning. Lisa also uncovered that the Carmichael family had left the house abruptly, and it had been empty ever since. The only consistent tenant was the house's gloomy, eerie atmosphere that seemed to drive away anyone who attempted to stay. The final straw came one night when Sarah woke up to find a figure standing at the foot of her bed. The figure was that of a little girl, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, with an expression of deep sadness. The apparition stared at Sarah with hollow eyes before vanishing into thin air. Terrified, the Millers decided it was time to leave. They packed their belongings and moved out within days, unable to endure the growing presence of the mysterious figure and the strange happenings. The Carmichael Place remains vacant to this day, its reputation as a haunted house growing with each passing year. The townsfolk whisper about the little girl who still roams the empty halls, her tragic past a reminder of the sorrow that lingers in that old, forgotten house. If you were to visit Bradford, you might hear stories of the Carmichael Place. Stories that speak of a restless spirit and an eerie house that seems to watch and wait for the next family to come and uncover its dark secrets. After the Millers left, the Carmichael Place stood empty, its windows dark and its gardens overgrown. The townspeople avoided the house, and its legend grew, becoming a topic of hushed conversations and local folklore. As the years went by, the stories about the house evolved into something of a rite of passage for thrill seekers and ghost hunters. In 1990, a young couple named Matt and Rachel Thompson, both passionate about history and the paranormal, moved to Bradford. They had heard of the Carmichael Place and, intrigued by its history and the potential for discovering something extraordinary, decided to purchase it. They were well aware of the house's reputation, but their enthusiasm outweighed their fear. Matt and Rachel were determined to restore the house to its former glory. They spent months cleaning, repairing, and renovating, hoping to breathe new life into the old structure. As they worked, they heard the same unsettling noises that had disturbed the Millers: creaking floors, distant whispers, and the occasional cold draft. They dismissed these as the quirks of an old house, attributing them to settling and natural wear. But as winter approached, the disturbances grew more intense. Rachel, who had always been sensitive to the supernatural, felt an increasing sense of dread. She would often wake in the middle of the night feeling as though she were being watched. She began to have vivid dreams of a little girl wandering through the house, her face obscured but her presence unmistakable. One particularly frigid night, Rachel was alone in the house while Matt was working late at the library. As she sat by the fireplace, the lights flickered, and a sudden chill swept through the room. The temperature dropped so drastically that her breath became visible. Rachel heard soft, childlike laughter echoing from the upper floors. Her heart raced as she climbed the stairs, guided by the haunting sound. As she reached the second floor, the laughter ceased, replaced by a mournful sobbing. Rachel followed the sound to the end of the hall, where she found an old trunk in a dusty, forgotten room. On a whim, she opened the trunk, revealing a collection of old, yellowed photographs and personal items. Among them was a photograph of a young girl, Abigail Carmichael. Rachel was struck by the resemblance between Abigail and the figure she had seen in her dreams. Realizing that she might be dealing with the spirit of the Carmichael family's daughter, she decided to research further. She reached out to local historians and discovered more about Abigail's tragic story. The girl had indeed been poisoned, a crime that had never been solved. The house's history revealed that Abigail's parents, devastated by her loss and plagued by guilt, had left abruptly, unable to bear the house's heavy atmosphere. Determined to bring peace to the restless spirit, Rachel began holding small ceremonies to honor Abigail. She set up a memorial in the room where the trunk had been found, placing the photograph and other artifacts there. She also reached out to local spiritualists for help in communicating with the spirit. As Rachel and Matt continued their efforts to restore the house, the atmosphere gradually changed. The disturbances lessened, and the house seemed to regain a sense of calm. Rachel felt a noticeable shift, as if the presence in the house had found some measure of solace. One night, while the couple was sitting by the fireplace, they heard a soft knock at the door. When they opened it, they found a beautiful old locket lying on the doorstep. Inside the locket was a small portrait of Abigail, smiling peacefully. Matt and Rachel took this as a sign that the spirit had found some form of resolution. Years passed, and the Carmichael Place became a beloved home for the Thompsons. They preserved its history, keeping the story of Abigail alive for future generations. The house was no longer the haunted relic it once was, but rather a testament to the resilience of both its past and present occupants. Local legends continued to speak of the house and its mysterious past, but the story of Abigail Carmichael now served as a reminder of the power of compassion and the importance of acknowledging the past. Visitors to the house occasionally reported feeling an unexpected sense of peace, and the Carmichael Place became a symbol of healing rather than fear. And so, the tale of the Carmichael Place lived on, not as a story of terror, but as a poignant reminder of the love and sorrow that linger in the old walls, and of how even the most restless of spirits might find their way to rest. Years after the Thompsons restored the Carmichael Place and turned it into a historical home, the house was known for its serene atmosphere and fascinating history. It became a popular destination for history enthusiasts and ghost hunters, though the latter found the once haunted house surprisingly quiet. One crisp autumn evening in 2005, a renowned paranormal investigator named Lucas Harrington visited the house. Lucas had a reputation for uncovering hidden truths about allegedly haunted locations and was intrigued by the legend of the Carmichael Place. He was particularly interested in the story of Abigail Carmichael, which had become a central part of the house's lore. Lucas spent the night in the house, conducting his usual array of investigations, setting up cameras, using spirit boxes, and taking EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, readings. To his surprise, the night was uneventful. There were no ghostly whispers, no sudden drops in temperature, and no eerie apparitions. The house seemed as peaceful as it had for the past decade. Just as Lucas was about to pack up, he noticed an old, dusty ledger tucked away in a hidden compartment behind a bookcase in the study. Curious, he opened it and discovered it was a journal belonging to Jonathan Carmichael, Abigail's father. The entries detailed the Carmichael family's life, but one entry stood out, dated just days before Abigail's death. The entry was cryptic and disjointed, but it hinted at a secret Jonathan was keeping. It mentioned a hidden truth and a final plea for justice that was never revealed. Lucas's curiosity was piqued. He decided to dig deeper using the journal as his guide. The following morning, Lucas conducted a thorough search of the house based on the clues in Jonathan's journal. He focused on a room that had been previously closed off during renovations, the one Rachel had found the trunk in. Behind a false wall in the basement, Lucas discovered a small, concealed room. Inside, there was an old, ornate chest, similar to the one Rachel had found before. With trembling hands, Lucas opened the chest. Inside, he found a collection of documents, personal letters, and a small, intricately carved box. The documents revealed a shocking truth. Abigail's death had not been an accident. The Carmichael family had been involved in a bitter dispute with a business partner who had poisoned Abigail in an attempt to manipulate Jonathan into financial ruin. The partner had disappeared, and the Carmichaels had fled the house in a panic, leaving behind the incriminating evidence. The small carved box contained a note from Abigail's mother, begging for someone to find the truth and clear her family's name. It seemed that the haunting of the Carmichael Place was not just a result of Abigail's restless spirit, but also the unresolved anguish of her parents. Lucas immediately contacted local authorities and historians, presenting his findings. The case was reopened, and the truth about Abigail's death was finally brought to light. The business partner was tracked down and faced justice, and the Carmichael family's name was cleared. The discovery made headlines, and the Carmichael Place became a symbol of both historic and personal resolution. The Thompsons continued to live in the house, which now had a renewed reputation, not just as a place with a haunting past, but as a beacon of justice and closure. Visitors still came, not only to learn about the house's history, but to see the place where an old mystery had been solved, bringing peace to those long gone. As for Abigail, it was said that after the truth was revealed, her spirit finally found rest. The house, once filled with whispers of sorrow, now echoed with the quiet hum of a story that had finally come full circle. The Carmichael Place stood as a testament to the enduring power of uncovering the truth and the healing that comes with it. Don't forget to subscribe to our new channel by clicking on the link in the description.